Book of Mediums, Part 2, Chapter 27, Contradictions and Mystifications. So, this is on, basically bad information that we get from spirits. Um, and why there's contradictory information is usually because one of the sources is probably wrong. Um, Critics of Spiritism often say that its believers do not uniformly agree amongst themselves, that we don't have all the same beliefs, that often contradict each other. So, if these teachings are given to us by the spirits, how come they're not the same? Um, Kardec says that these contradictions are, they appear more than they're actually real, that they often more pertain to superficial accounts, and the contradictions come from two spirits. It's either an error from the medium or mankind, or the questions you're putting across, um, or it's an error on the side of the spirits. It's like that one guy who said he put out money to prove anything paranormal, etc., but he would only hear certain evidence, and he would only accept certain parameters, basically, in order for him to stack the deck so that he could disprove everything. A contradiction of human origin are explained in the chapter on systems, number 36. It's basically an error in scientific method, and that there's a greater uniformity as Spiritism advanced. In order to understand why there's contradiction between spirits, not all spirits think the same thing, because it can't be lost on us the infinite number of degrees that must be passed through before obtaining the status of a superior spirit, that not all spirits have reached perfection. They are but human beings stripped of our physical envelope. Spirits of every rank and being are able to manifest themselves, so their communications bear the seal of their ignorance or their knowledge, their moral inferiority or superiority. The instructions we are given help to distinguish between false spirits, good spirits, and bad spirits. And so that's also a judgment on the side of mankind of to accept the information or not as true. Um, Explains some of the contradictions. Among spirits, as among man, there are false, half learned scientists, haughty, and presumptuous spirits. Only perfected, highly elevated spirits know everything or almost everything a lot more. There are for others, as well for us, mysteries that are explained in their own way, according to their own ideas, on which they have opinions which are more or less correct, which comes more from their own personalities and what they want to happen of their own will than more of an elevated perspective. The wrong is that the mediums have too lightly embraced opinions contrary to good sense. Um, Contradictions of spirit origin have no cause, but in the diversity of intelligence, knowledge, judgment, and morality of spirits, who are of yet unfit to know everything or comprehend everything. Book of Spirits, Introduction, Conclusion, 300. Some people will say, what are the use 300s in this book? But Book of Spirits was 13 and Conclusion 9. Some people will say, what use are the teachings of spirits if they don't offer us greater certainty than a human's teaching? The answer is we do not accept the teachings of all men with confidence of humans, and neither we do with spirits, should we do that as well. We must accept human opinion as much as we accept spirit opinion. There's vanity among the most learned men. We must distinguish from the rabble of inferior spirits, and a profound knowledge of spiritism will certainly lead us to this distinction. But even with these instructions are limited, and it's not given to spirits to know everything, for a greater reason, it's the same as with humans. So if spirits are questioned in vain, if forbidden to be revealed, or because they themselves are ignorant of them, they can only give their personal opinion. But what these various personal opinions are what vain spirits give as absolute truths. It is especially on what should remain hidden as a future and on principle of things. On these matters that are considered to be secrets of God, on these points, there are the most contradictions. See the following chapter. And the previous chapter was based on all the questions and how we frame questions to spirits. Can the same spirit communicating to two different places at the same time transmit to them contradictory answers on the same subject? If the two circles different opinions and thoughts, the answer might reach them differently because they are under the influence of different columns of spirits. It's not the answer that's contradictory, it's the manner in which it is rendered. So it depends on how they're running their things, it depends on their own development, etc., etc. We understand that the answer might be altered, but when the qualities of the medium exclude all idea of bad influence, how does it happen that superior spirits hold a different and contradictory language on the same subject with different peoples of serious study? The really superior spirits never contradict themselves, and their language is always the same with the same people. It may be different according to different people and places, but it's necessary to pay attention that the contradiction is often only apparent, more in words than in the sentiment or the thought or the spirit of the letter. For reflection, it can be found that the fundamental idea is the same. The same spirit may answer differently on the same question, according to the degree of perfection of those who invoke them. So, like, how we can understand something might be on a different level than somebody else can understand something. It's not always good that everybody should have the same answer while they are not as advanced. It is exactly as between a child and a wise person ask you the same question, you would answer the question in a different way to be comprehended and to satisfy them. Although the answer is different, it would always have the same groundwork and the same motivations. Spirits aren't going to be too argumentative against someone with very prejudiced belief because um sometimes people need to listen to spirits little by little, or they'll just turn their ears off to their advices. Um, the appropriate language of the persons as you would do yourself, as if you were a skillful orator, or convincer, or like even you can even say like a hostage negotiator, right? You would not speak Chinese to a Muslim, nor would you speak as to a Frenchman. Um, but the truth is still the truth that may come through in different ways. All spirits have their tasks and missions. They accomplish them in the conditions they judge right for the good of everybody who receives their communications. By what means can we know the truth? To discern errors from the truth, the answers must be examined thoroughly and meditated on upon long and seriously. It is an entire study. Time is necessary for this as all your other studies. Study, compare, examine. We tell you this constantly. Knowledge of the truth is at this price. How do you expect to reach the truth when you interpret everything according to your own narrow ideas, which you take for great ones? But the day is not far distant when teachings of the spirits will be everywhere uniform in the details as in the fundamentals. Their mission is to obliterate error, but that can only come by degrees. There are people who have neither time nor capacity for a serious or thorough study, and who accept what is taught to them without examination. Thus, they may give credence to error. Let them practice good and evil. That's the essential thing. For that, there are not two doctrines. Good is always good, whether it's done in the name of Allah or Jehovah, for there is only one God for the universe. How can spirits who appear to be developed have ideas that are false on things? They have their own doctrine. Those who not significantly advance but who think they are take their own ideas as the truth. It's the same among you. What are we to think of the doctrine that says that only one spirit can communicate and that one spirit is God or Jesus? The spirit who teaches that is one who desires to govern, so it's basically a bad spirit saying that. Reason must tell you that good comes from good and bad from bad, so why do you desire a good tree to bring forth evil fruit? Did you ever see grapes from an apple tree? The diversity of communications is most patent proof of the diversity of the spiritual origin or different spirits talking to us. Besides, spirits who pretend that they alone communicate forget to say why others cannot. Their pretension is a negation of the most beautiful and consoling fact of spiritism, of the invisible and invisible worlds, of beings dear to them, who would otherwise be lost to them without their return. These relations identified man with his future and detached from him the material world. And that these spirits, contrary to that, plunge us back into doubt, which makes torment and gives food for egotism that bring us back to the material realm. One of the most striking contradictions is around reincarnation. If reincarnation is necessary for spiritual progression, how come not all spirits teach this? There are spirits whose ideas are limited to the present. They believe that how they are living now must last forever. They do not see beyond their circle of perception. They will not think about it when it comes. They know that the spirit progresses, but how they progress, they might not know of this. Therefore, if you ask a spirit, they may talk about the seven heavens, that one is above each other like a staging. There are some who will talk about a sphere of fire, and the sphere of stars, and the city of flowers, and the city of the chosen. So they kind of describe it how they can, if they can. But they might not know how the spiritual mechanism works either. There's many things that we still need to understand about reincarnation and the spiritual realm. People, we have more or less judgment, more or less instruction, and more and less enlightenment on things. Some spirits are pleased to keep us in ignorance, pretend to instruct us, and profit, and how we believe in them falsely. Um, they do not get to the bottom of things, and when they're pressed, then they give themselves up as imposters. Again, being vague. And we can't know everything at once. They're saying too sudden light blinds us without illuminating us. Like too much information, you can only study so much at one point in time for our intelligence to grasp things. Like, um, for example, Moses did not teach all that Christ taught in the future, and Christ said himself many things. The understanding of the time, they did not understand it and was preserved for future generations. You speak of reincarnation and are astonished that it's not taught in certain countries. But remember, where there's slavery or there's prejudice, they would have rejected the idea of reincarnation or spiritism, that we can reincarnate into different cultures or races, for example. For the idea of who is master may become slave and the reverse would have appeared monstrous to them. It's safer for us to grasp this idea later in mankind's history, so that we can bring it to its fulmination. And we're very short-sighted to judge the timing that God has set out for certain things with his permission, and with his own motive we cannot help to understand. A unity in spirit belief is certain to come at one point in time and the future, and that disagreements will be erased little by little as all men are enlightened. For such is the will of God, against which error cannot prevail. And this is coming from the Spirit of Truth. How that spirit identifies. Spirits that give us crappy teaching about the progress of spirit science. We'll get thrown in some obstacles. We can't have anything without some trouble, or where weeds will not grow for the laborer to pull out. It's a consequence of the inferiority of our world. If we were perfect, then we would only accept the true teachings. You need a trained eye to distinguish false from real stones at the jeweler, for example. You need an apprenticeship to distinguish true from false spiritual teaching. And these false doctrines are useful in exercising us to distinguish truth from error. If we adopted error, it will slow our progress, and because we are not sufficiently advanced to comprehend the truth. While awaiting the coming of unity, each person will probably believe that we themselves have their truth and maintain that what we know is true. And this is an illusion that will call to us deceiving spirits. On what can an impartial and a man who is not self-interested base his judgment? The purest light is obscured by no cloud. The diamond without the flaw is the most valuable. Judge then the spirits by the purity of their teaching. Unity will come from them whose good has never been mingled with the bad, and will be more judged for the truth. Fundamental principles are everywhere the same and should unite us in a common thought for the love of God and the practice of good. The mode of progression for souls, the final end, is the same, and the means of attaining it is also the same. Do good, and there are not two methods of doing it. Best doctrine satisfies the heart and the reason, and contains the most elements to lead men to good. I assure you that will be the one to prevail. The contradictions in spirit communications may arise from the following causes: ignorance of spirits, deceptions of inferior spirits from malice or mischief. They will say the contrary from what the spirit whose name they have borrowed already has said elsewhere. The will of the spirit who talks according to the times, places, and person, and considers it useful not to say everything to everybody. The insufficiency of human language to experience things of the spiritual world. The insufficiency of the means of communication which do not always permit the spirit to transmit his whole thought. And the interpretation or the explanation according to our own ideas, our own prejudices, or points of view from which we interpret something. Study, observation, experience, and the removal of the self out of the equation, and love of others alone can teach us to distinguish these different shades of truth. Of mystification, it is disagreeable to be deceived.